Uh, I don't know how many years, but I usually say in the last 500 years, I really haven't heard or seen anything substantial coming out of the Muslim world or from Islamic thought or ideas. We've been turned to consumers.
Yeah.
So all over the Muslim world was better of a consumer like everybody else. You know, we drink spring water, the Saudis are turning wherever. But so there is something missing there.
Yeah.
And how did we lose that? Because even if we lose it for one reason or another, the crisis that the West are facing, really they need a different model, a different alternative, a different voice.
What the Western model has done is to take the sacredness out of everything. And the challenge that we face today is to go back to what does justice really mean? And justice in this context.
Environmental justice, you talked about that.
In a sense, so moving towards justice, is in many ways keeping mizan, the balance, connected, keeping that balance as it is. So the nature as it was intended to be is in a natural state of balance. Human beings are Allah has made us correctly and perfectly placed to exist within this context. We have everything that we need around us. So when we come from a place where we strip everything of sacredness, then we start to see everything as just a thing or an item.
You consume it.
Precisely. And then now you're getting to the real crux of it, because the real argument is this. When we overconsume, we use, we consume, we use, we consume. As we start to see, that's because we see every human being, whether you believe in socialism or capitalism, every human being is just a thing. It's just your only value is that you can make something, or you can create something, or you can consume something. Within Islam, we have a different tradition. It's your value is that you were born, that Allah has made your soul. And if you create society based on everyone has a value based on their connection to their creator, instead of everyone has a value based on what they can consume and use, then you start to look at things differently. Then you start to say things are sacred and people need to be protected and need to be given rights. And then, thinking about water, you mentioned water. Human beings shouldn't be charging for water. It's very clear within the Islamic tradition. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ never charged people for water.
In the desert.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly.
It would have been a great business and pilgrimage.
It would have been a great. So you're right. So I think that we have a strong tradition, and we need to reconnect with that tradition.
It's interesting. I was reading a study was saying conservative. They look at the environment. That's why they drink bottled water, spring water, and liberal drink tap water. And the reason, I'm sure more, but the reason is the conservative think they don't trust the municipality and government. That's why they don't trust tap water. But in general, it lends itself to the relationship with the environment. That environment has to be controlled.
Yes.
So the water from the river is not good enough, or from the municipality. You have to take it, clean it, and offer it like everything else.
I think, why would they know that the water was dirty? They would know the water is dirty is because for the past 100 or 200 years, industrial society that was based upon greed and its incipient sort of push has created systems that would push toxicity into the air, the land, and the water everywhere. So you create an entire industries based on
It's
just
interesting because
pollution.
they don't see the connection.
Exactly. So, but they're part of it. If you have big, huge corporations that dump their toxic waste into the water and dump toxic waste into the ground, and you worked at that factory, and your grandfather worked at that factory, of course you're gonna be like, I don't want to drink that water.
Yeah.
I'm nervous and scared about that water. So I can understand the connection. They have seen it. They've been intimately a part of it.
So a part of it also that we are now with the technology and modern life provided us, separated us from nature.
Correct.
You have cars, you have electricity,
Correct.
you're always away from nature.
Correct.
And then, as you say, it becomes not sacred, and you can.
And as Muslims, one of the things that our challenge is that if we're in that practice of making wudu every day,
interesting.
Right? If we're in that practice, right? So we are connecting more with that, and also in the practice of prayer, like your prayer is a part of orienting your body towards the planet. Really, you're as a part of prayer, you're in line with the movement of the sun and the moon throughout the day. So I think that we have within our framework of being Muslim, we already have a way that attunes us to understanding the planet in a better way and to making sure that the sacred stays within everything that we do.
what's going on post 9/11 and all that focus
Correct.
and what's wrong with Islam and Muslims. And I think from the other side too, there's a lot of Muslims that distrust what the West did bring them. And so where do we go from here? How we bring all this mistrust? Because it's one planet, one Earth, and climate change is climate change. It doesn't, differentiate between a Muslim and non-Muslim.
Without a doubt. I think one of the things that we go from here is that when you're talking about the environment and the protection of the planet, you're not having a conversation. It's an interfaith conversation, like you just mentioned. And it's a conversation that atheists and Jews and Hindus and Muslims can actually genuinely have a conversation together. Why? Because we're not talking about Aqidah. We're not talking about our creed, right? We're actually having a conversation that brings it down a notch. And we're not having this upper level conversation. So you don't get an imam and a priest and all these scholars doing photos and press opportunities. It's not that. It's actually the lay regular congregants, the normal regular people that actually have to put in the work. When that bridge came down recently, a couple years back, who was going to actually come up and say to the government, we need better infrastructure. We need to invest in our infrastructure. It's not the heads who were responsible. It was actually the regular people who had to use that bridge every single day. So those are examples of where this is an opportunity where people can actually come together on a common front. And you don't have to talk about what you believe. You don't have to talk about what you think God is. You don't even have to go there. And it's liberating to actually go to that space.
Yeah, because it's right there and physical and you
Precisely,
can deal with it.
And it speaks to our traditions anyway. So a good Muslim and a good Christian and a good Hindu and a good Buddhist all of them have within their faith a better connection to the planet and a deep connection to the earth. So you don't have to go too far for people to find that. All you have to do is say, let's just remember that. Let's just go back to that. And even we used to have there was a time when there was no choice but to be in better concert with the planet and to have a better relationship. In the Muslim tradition, that was part of the classical Muslim eras, is that they had air conditioning and water flows in their homes because that was what you did, because it was required. We've only gotten used to it in the age of cheap energy, in the age of throwing things away.
It's cheap now.
Exactly, right? So we've only gotten into this mode then, and now I think we're shifting back. We're shifting back to saying we can be better at this. We can be smarter than this. And that's where I think we're at now. And I think it's an exciting moment.
It's interesting that what modern life is providing us, solutions
Correct.
for our daily life, whatever, it provides solutions so you can consume more. So we find out a different way to lower the gas. We find out a different way, decaffeinated coffee, eHarmony, take the risk out of relationship, Pepsi-free, decaffeinated war. There's no violence when you see war. So you make it easy for people to consume more. Yes. You don't come with a solution that really changes people's behavior.
That's a really great point. There was a scholar named Sayyid Hussein Nasr who wrote a book called Man and Nature. And he was he was one of the original scholars within the Muslim and Western context.
What time frame?
He wrote a book, Man and Nature. He wrote the book in the 50s, which was right after the seminal environmental book, A Silent Spring, that Rachel Carson wrote.
Oh, yes.
So right soon after that, an Iranian-American Muslim scholar wrote Man and Nature, and he really spoke to that dichotomy, that tension that was occurring, that was starting to really become apparent. And I think that one of the challenges that we have as Muslims in America is actually seeing past some of these illusions that these things are making our lives more convenient, and actually say maybe they're not, and take a step back. And one of the biggest examples of that is the availability of halal food everywhere, right? Most of the halal food we eat might be halal, it might be killed the correct way, but it's not necessarily living the best life. It's still part of the factory farm system.
So you can get involved, and instead everybody focuses, is this halal? He doesn't ask how it was raised.
Exactly.
It's still a consumer.
Exactly.
I mean, being a halal, maybe they raise the price by putting the label on it. It's the same thing, no cluster or no whatever. It's a consumer decision. But you wrote in your book some of the things that Muslim can do. And we're talking about Muslim living in a non-Muslim country, like American Muslims.
Of course. I'll just say, just initially, one of the things that Sheikh Hamza Youssef from Zaytuna Institute said once is that when you see someone that looks as though they're non-Muslim or something, he was talking to an immigrant brother who asked, what can I do when I'm in a non-Muslim country? How do I live with these people? And one of the things he said was like, when you see someone see them as having a better relationship or being closer to Allah than you are. So that automatically you're humbled when you come to meet someone. So one of the first steps that we need to take, that's one of the initial steps, is humble yourself, right? And reorient yourself. But I think there's also some very practical things.